What is going on, everyone? Welcome back to another team selection video on Fantasy Football Scout off the back of what was a pretty strange, chaotic, weird week. We're going to talk about it now in terms of what happened and then obviously look ahead to game week 22 where the deadline is just tomorrow, right? So it's a really, really quick turnaround. Transfers and captain decisions need to be made fast, and that's what we're going to talk about in this one. I'm joined by Gianni as always. How are you feeling today?
Yeah, I'm good. Yeah, all good. Looking forward to another busy kind of week of FPL. I love the midweek fixtures.
This is it now. This is the last week of chaos until we. I think the only time now we'll get midweek fixtures, I think, is when there's double game weeks. So, I'll be looking forward to that. It probably isn't that too far away either. But for now, the chaos is kind of down a little bit. Let's just jump straight into game week 21. So 61 points, another green arrow. What a weird week. Like Stones and Cancelo missing out. We'll talk about that when we look at the team for next week about how much of a problem that might be going forward. So you had 5 defenders, like everyone else, obviously, in their squad, and only one played. Talk us through it.
Yeah, it's quite funny because when you look at my 5 defenders over the last month or two, you can probably say all 5 of them are nailed, and 4 of them didn't play. So I can forget about the nailed comment now, maybe. But Mitchell has been starting. Van Aanholt came in and they kept a clean sheet. So I'm a little bit worried moving forward. I think Mitchell was just rested, but as was Ward. And Hodgson likes to go with either Van Aanholt and Klein or Ward and Mitchell. And so it'll be interesting to see what he does moving forward. A little bit worried. Dyer hasn't missed a game under this season in the Premier League when fit. And then the 2 City lads. I mean, the good thing about Stones and Cancelo is, yes, they were benched, but you just look at it and go, oh, at least they'll play next week because that's what Pep does.
And it's a good fixture.
So I'm all right about it. And so many other very good teams had both Stones and Cancelo. So we're all in the same boat, aren't we? But outside of that, I relied heavily at the back again on Aston Villa. Martinez has been purchase of the season for everyone that owned him early. And Target has actually, in the last 4 or 5 games, while someone like Grealish has done really well and got consistent returns, Target has outscored Grealish. Target has been brilliant. So a double Villa defence, I'm chuffed with.
Yeah, it's been so good. I mean, probably a bit. I'm a Martinez owner as well, so I'm not trying to say you were lucky because I was too. But how Southampton haven't got a goal in that game, I don't know. But that's what you get with cheap keepers like that. They pull 10 pointers out of the bag from nowhere, and that's why no one ever goes for expensive keepers. So that'd be an interesting point to discuss at some point whether they should change goalkeeper scoring so that the likes of Ellis and Allison are actually worthy of conversation. But yeah, Martinez is just ridiculous, and I think the fixtures are pretty good going forward. I think he is still he's not really as cheap as he was, obviously, but he's still probably one of the goalkeepers of choice, and he's top of the rankings as well now. Been extremely good. Yeah, super unlucky with City. We'll talk about that in a minute. Captain Gundogan, what did you make of his performance? Or Man City against Sheffield United in general, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, we watched that on Scoutcast Match Day, and when we saw the 11, it was a little bit like, okay, there's a few players rested already without KDB. We know they can look short, but then you take out Cancelo to their attacking dynamic and they look short again. You take out Rodri for Fernandinho, it's just not quite as good. You take out Sterling, it's not quite as good. So it was almost a B team, wasn't it? And yeah, they did well and they looked steady, but Gundogan never looked like he was going to haul. I don't think he had a shot. He got into a couple of really nice positions where he was just a knockdown short of a tap-in. And he put a couple of corners in which had good headers from Laporte and Diaz. But yeah, I still feel like it was a good call on paper because of the fixture and because Salah hadn't been performing and Son looks rubbish without Kane at the moment. Again, it's one of those where I was in the same boat as everyone. And because I didn't really consider Salah, I wasn't annoyed at the Salah haul. I was between Son and Gundogan and Cancelo. So yeah, they all blanked.
Yeah, it didn't really make much of a deal. In fact, Gundogan was the highest scorer, so he did all right there. We'll just quickly touch on Bamford's performance. How good do you think he was in Leeds? Because obviously there's been, he'd blanked a whole 3 games in a row. Lots of talk about Leeds being tired, etc. That it was getting too much of them. I also think, by the way, I just quickly talk about this. I think the expectations on Leeds are just ridiculous. I saw an interview with Bamford afterwards where he got asked, a lot's been made that you've only taken 1 point off the top 6. Like, this is a newly promoted championship side. I get that they're better than a lot of the other teams that have come up, and that's, and they're a big club, etc. And, people wanted to see them back in the league. But for a newly promoted side to be asking questions about why they've only taken 1 point off the top 6 is pretty crazy. It just shows what they can do, and it was shown today. He was brilliant, wasn't he?
Yeah, that starting 11 in the big win yesterday. Sorry, the 11 that finished the game were that all 11 players had played in the Championship for Leeds. Like, this is a Championship team. Yeah, they made a couple of nice signings, but I just can't understand why people get so frustrated with Bamford blanking. I think we forget, because his points have been so good and so consistent, I think we forget that he's like under 7 million. Like, what do you expect from a sub-7 forward? This isn't a Vardy or a Werner, the sort of 9-10 million pound bracket where we need returns every week. He's a cheap budget forward, and he performs like a premium often. And yeah, he took his goal really well. It could have had more. I mean, he laid it on a plate for Harrison for that second assist. But for me, I named about a month ago, I named the 3 players that would be in my team at the end of the season that I could see me running with all season, no matter where their form dips. 3 players that I think I will be set with between now and the end of the season. This was a month back on the FPL show. I said Martinez, I said Bamford, and I said Salah. And again, I can't see those 3 leaving. Like, because of the price points they're in and the teams they're in, Bamford can blank, but then you have to look at it and go, Leeds can score goals against anyone on any given day. So of course I'm going to run with him. There's also not a huge amount of options up top. So yeah, I know a lot went to Dominic Calvert-Lewin, but yeah, he's not a bad buy at all. But for me, Bamford's a must.
But Bamford's now the second highest scoring forward, 3 points ahead of Vardy. Now, Bamford hasn't missed a game, which is obviously good for FPL. Vardy has missed about 3 or 4, but yeah, absolutely ridiculous. And by the way, Callum Wilson is only 9 points behind Bamford, and I think a lot of people have written him off as well. So the cheap forwards are offering such good value right now. I think outside of Harry Kane, it's pretty difficult to go elsewhere right now. Let's look at the team going forward, game week 22. Obviously, first things first, we're hoping that Stones and Cancelo both play. I think right now in FPL, we're in a bit of a holding pattern where there's not really too many good fixtures to attack for players that we don't already own anyway. We're obviously waiting for info about the double game weeks because that will then structure our transfers and thoughts. But we're also in a period where we might want to get rid of some of these City players because they're now rotation risk potentially, but also we don't want to get rid of them. So what are your feelings with Stones and Cancelo? Because I mean, it was an easy game anyway. Sheffield United, they didn't really trouble Man City, but Laporte is no slouch, right? He can play, he can come in at any time. So are you worried about having these 2 now?
No, do you know what? I'm not. I mean, the only one I'm keeping a closer eye on, I guess, is Stones because of Laporte. But we can't forget, Laporte's not been out the team because he was injured. He was out the team because he had a nightmare against Spurs. He was out of form. He was dropped. He was on the bench for a good 5-6 weeks when Stones was doing well. Then he got injured. So I think we need to see a Stones nightmare performance or 2 for him to lose his place. Saying that, they've got so many fixtures. Of course, there's going to be some rotation. And Laporte, off the back of that injury, needed 90 minutes. And we were saying when watching the game at the weekend, there's no way Stones is coming on. Laporte needs 90, and Laporte got 90. Do I think Laporte starts this midweek? No, I think Stones comes back in, and I think Laporte plays, maybe 1 in every 3 or 4 games. But I don't think we'll see a centre-back partnership of Laporte and Stones. Pep was really reluctant to do that last season and the season before. That's why he bought the likes of Otamendi, and that's why he played Fernandinho centre-back. Laporte and Stones is not a combo Pep likes. One, I don't think either are particularly vocal, and 2, just the way they complement each other just doesn't work. I think he sees an error in there. So Diaz, of course, I think will play every single game, and there could be a point where I go Stones to Diaz, but Cancelo I'm very happy with because the upside's huge, isn't it? So yeah, it's one to monitor, certainly for Stones owners, I think more than Cancelo. Look, Cancelo before this game week had started 9 in 10. If he continues to get 9 in 10 or even 8 in 10, 4 in 5, I think you've got to be happy because the upside's so good.
At what point, or what will have to happen for you to do Stones to Diaz? Are you waiting for more benchings? Are you just waiting for a spare transfer? What would make you do that?
Yeah, no, I did see more benchings, I think, because I don't have the transfers. I've got other fires to put out to use a transfer Stones to Diaz. And of course, it's like an extra, 0.7-ish?
Yeah, it's not cheap.
So, yeah, I think I'd need to see Laporte playing another Premier League game or two. And obviously, we've got Champions League coming up. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with Stones' minutes there, because he could put Laporte in for a few Champions League games, saying that it's knockout. So I'd be surprised. So, yeah, it's just one to monitor. But I think I need to see a couple more benchings before I move Stones on.
Yeah, I think, to be honest, we've got a few fixtures that are going to kind of tell us just how important Stones still is, because almost certainly he will play against Burnley. I'd be very surprised if he doesn't, because that's on Wednesday. Obviously, quick turnaround, so the chance of Laporte suddenly playing twice when Stones has been so good. Then 4 days later, it's Liverpool, and then the next match after that is Spurs. So if we see Stones start all of them, I think it will kind of stamp that he is the authority. Obviously, it does mean that potentially Laporte comes in for the easier games, which is not what you necessarily want. But I think that's probably a worry for kind of 2, 3, 4 weeks at this point. I don't think there's too much panic right now.
And maybe the double, Andy, it might be a time, if you've got the transfers or your wildcarding before the double, that's when you might switch Stones to Diaz, because you'll look at that and go, okay, in the double, it's 2 games in 5 days. Does he therefore just play Stones in one, Laporte in the other? Whilst Diaz, in the double, just because he's played every minute pretty much, he'll probably start both.
Yeah, I'm the same as you. I am eyeing up that move. It did kind of frustrate me a little bit against Sheffield United, but there's no point, like I said, panicking about it this week. You have got Mitchell playing. Again, that's one I think this week will probably tell us what Hodgson is thinking. I guess the reason for doing that is he's unlikely to come on, and you've got Target on the bench. Not bothered about playing Mitchell this week.
Yeah, exactly that. The fear with Palace is when Mitchell came in for Van Aanholt 5-6 weeks ago and they kept a clean sheet, he kept Mitchell in the team, and he does the same on the other side with Ward and Klein. Now Klein and Van Aanholt have played well against Wolves and kept a clean sheet. There is the fear that in me that just goes, he's going to keep the same back four because they've just kept a clean sheet, and they've been struggling, Palace, to keep cleanos. The reason I liked Mitchell 6 weeks back, and I don't know if you remember our conversation, was Van Aanholt being out of contract, I think plays a big part here. And he needs to see Mitchell and needs to know if he's going to be his first choice left back next season. And it looks like he is, and he's played really well. So again, if Mitchell is benched this coming week, and I see Van Aanholt's first choice, I might look to sell Mitchell on, because I am preparing for a bench boost in a couple of weeks' time, and I need everyone in my squad playing. So he's one for me to monitor. And I've got loads of money in the bank. I could upgrade Mitchell to Robertson or Alonso or whoever. So it's one to monitor. But the fixtures are great, Palace. I want to keep Mitchell if I can.
Yeah, they're really good. I think the only thing, I guess, with Van Aanholt is he does offer a bit more, doesn't he, going forward? So I wonder if they just want that in there. But like you say, he did get dropped. He is out of contract. I always the only thing I felt with that contract thing is I completely agree. But I also think, have Palace got the luxury of kind of like pushing someone out the door? Because I don't know, they'll probably be safe this year, but it's getting to that point. I guess so. We'll have to see, but I don't expect him to come on unless there's an injury. Like, you'd have to get pretty unlucky for Mitchell to come on. How much money have you got in the bank, by the way? Because I realise I've got 2.2 million on the screen, but I didn't change that before we came on and started recording, so I don't know if it's completely correct.
No worries. I've got loads. I've got 6.1 because I guess I was 2 million last week, and then this week I brought in Gundogan for Rashford.
Okay, so yeah.
So I had loads extra. So yeah, 6.1. Rolling in it.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay, so last week, obviously, you played Lookman against West Brom, so I think it was fair. Yeah. 2 goals for Fulham, and he just happened not to be involved with either. Are you looking to move him on this week? Because, I mean, looking at that team, he probably is the one that stands out as maybe could be moved on. You thinking about getting rid?
It's so difficult. I watched Fulham West Brom for Scoutcast Matchday alongside the City game, and he was involved in everything yet again. And he got the assist of the assist. He does that a lot. He missed a good chance. But if he can't perform against West Brom in terms of points, then who can he perform against? And I need to look at it and go, the fixtures are turning. But what I like about Lookman is it gives me the easy benching thing. He's just first sub. Saying that, I've got Wood in my squad. So do I want 6 million forward on the bench or 5 million midfielder? Ideally, I want 5 million midfielder. The problem I've got is I need to get in a Villa player, and I want Grealish more than I want Watkins. So I can go Lookman to Grealish, or I can go Wood to Watkins. But the player I guess I want is Grealish. I wanted to buy Grealish 2 weeks ago, and the reason I didn't was that yellow card thing. I was a bit worried about the kind of fourth yellow because I had Target on the fourth yellow as well. Now that's been wiped. Lookman to Grealish looks obvious. It just means moving forward each week, I'm going to have a benching headache because Wood's fixtures do get better. And eventually, if I sell Wood to a Dominic Calvert-Lewin, then it means every weekend I'm benching a Bamford or an Antonio. But I am preparing for a bench boost, and there is usually an injury or rotation around. Gundogan might see some rotation in a few weeks. So I think Lookman probably is the one that makes way this week, and it probably is Grealish that comes in.
Yeah, I don't think it's necessarily the end of the. I mean, I agree. Like, I hate having benching headaches. It feels like you've got one extra decision to make each week that you don't really want to make. But I guess with everything that's gone on, it's not the end of the world. And some of these players do have kind of difficult fixtures coming up. So, and I only know this because my team's very similar. Like, so for Son, for example, game week 24, he has Man City, and I'm not saying you bench him, but that could be a time, especially if Kane's not back. We'll obviously have to wait about that. Gundogan's got Liverpool soon. That's going to be a tricky fixture. So there are opportunities maybe to use it all. And I guess with money so readily available, it's not the end of the world to have Wood on the bench. Eventually you downgrade him or you downgrade a midfielder and you're back to it. So yeah, I really like Watkins, but obviously Grealish is the one. I kind of feel like Grealish is like one of the most underrated FPL players. I'm not saying he's underrated in real life because he's not now, but from an FPL point of view, he's just so good. Fixtures are a bit mixed, but Villa are just so good. I think they'll be fine. Like even West Ham at home this week, I think will be decent.
Do you reckon he'll be on pens with El Ghazi out the team? Because Watkins surely isn't going to take a pen again. So a part of my thinking is also the Grealish on pens, although Barkley's back in the 11.
The last quote, right, which we saw, so I didn't realise this until I think David told me on Team News, was that El Ghazi, Dean Smith said something like, El Ghazi is the penalty taker when he's on the pitch, or because he was on the pitch, something like that. If not, it would have been Jack. Like, that's what he said.
Yeah, now, I remember that.
Yeah, so that doesn't mean that Barkley won't take them because I think Barkley's got a fairly good record, and like we all want Grealish to take them for obvious reasons, but I don't think he's ever really taken penalties. But he is the main man in that team. It doesn't strike me as a player that would panic having to take it. So as we've heard, it probably is Grealish, but until it happens, I guess we're just waiting to see him. But I just think he's such a good option anyway. His numbers are so good. And he's probably going to have a good double game week as well. So I think that's a solid move, Lookman to Grealish. Do you think you're going to do it then? Are you kind of sliding that way, or are you looking to roll?
Yeah, no, I'm more likely to go Grealish in than roll, I think. I can't see myself making a transfer anywhere else, though. So it will be Grealish in or roll. I don't think... Originally, I was going to go DCL in for Wood. I don't think I'm going to make that move. I wasn't impressed with Everton at the weekend. They were pretty poor. And again, if we got a fixture announcement of game week 24 where we knew Everton were playing twice before this deadline, maybe that would force my hand on DCL. But, it's Everton or Southampton as well as Man City that could play twice in 24. But again, we're waiting on that announcement. That could come later in the week, so we've not got long to make that. When I can't remember the deadline is, it's tomorrow at 4:30. Yeah, unlikely to see that.
I think as well, like, again, because your team's so similar, I've been thinking ahead. Like, game week 23, I think, is a time when if people haven't got Spurs players, they're going to want them. I think even without Kane, even if he wasn't back, I think Son versus West Brom just looks so good, and you've already got him. So at some point, you're probably going to be able to roll and transfer anyway. So I think Grealish in's good move. We should just touch on a couple of points. So I suppose Calvert-Lewin versus Leeds is a good fixture, but it's also probably quite a good fixture for Leeds as well, for Bamford. Hypothetically, right, he has a dead leg. That's why he's flagged. He himself said he's going to be fine, and I'm sure he probably will be. We'll wait and see what Bielsa says in the press conference. If he was out, would that change your plans, or would you just play target or something like that and still just bring Grealish in?
Yeah, I'd just play target and still bring Grealish in, I think. There's no way I'd be selling Bamford. Also, watching the clip, like when you see those quotes, it's all well and good, but I like to watch them if I can. And I saw Bamford questioned, and at the end of the clip that Leeds posted on Twitter yesterday, he's kind of asked, and he laughs. He's just like, "Oh no, it's just a dead leg." Like, he completely laughs it off. The fact that he was there doing the interview, he wasn't having any treatment. And yes, players can be out off the back of a dead leg for a week or so, but they play on Wednesday. I'm happy there. They play Wednesday at 7:30 against Everton. I think he'll be fine. It just the fact he did the interview, the fact he laughed it off, he walks off fine. Yeah, I'm happy. And I just think he's a really good own. And actually, I'm with you. I think Bamford's as good a fixture for Bamford is against Everton it is for Dominic Calvert-Lewin against Leeds.
Yeah, I watched the reverse fixture. Like Leeds got a clean sheet, but they were lucky to get that clean sheet. Like Everton should have scored,
Yeah.
but Leeds could have also had more as well. So I think it was 1-0, but there should have been way more goals in that game. So I think if you own either, it's a good match. Also on the injury, I'm not saying this would affect whether they play him or not, but I'm sure it comes into thinking a little bit. Is Rafinha and Rodrigo both went off with injuries, and they looked like they could be injuries that would keep them out during midweek. So if you lose those two and you lose Bamford, then you start to look a little thin. So I think, I think you'll probably be fine. Let's just quickly touch on one more thing before we talk about captaincy, which I think is probably well set for this week. Son without Kane. I don't know about you, but I have never seen a less inspired team than Spurs yesterday. They had zero idea. I will say, like, we shouldn't take anything away from Brighton because they have been good all season, and the performances haven't translated into points. And they defended really well. There was just no creativity. We know how much Kane has kind of been the creative force in that team. And Ndombele was okay, but Bale just looks done. I don't want to write him off because I thought really early on there was a couple of quite nice turns. I thought, all right, maybe this is the game where he kind of comes into life. Kane's out. This is his time to spark, and then just nothing after that. I mean, what did you make of Son and Spurs in general? Are you worried without Kane?
I'm not expecting much. I don't know if I'm worried because everyone else owns him. So Toby said to me yesterday, he was like, "Oh, you annoyed you bought in Son?" Because I bought him in ahead of Liverpool and he's blanked twice now. I said, "No, not at all." Because I can't watch Spurs with it knowing he's 60% owned and still really explosive on his day without him. And because money isn't an issue, I'm like, yeah, I was just glad to have him. So yes, he's blanked, but am I annoyed by it? No. Will I give him the armband for the foreseeable without Kane? Maybe not. The expected goals yesterday for Spurs, that first half, 0.03. In the game, it was around 0.5. In the last two games combined, expected goals for Spurs, something like 0.67. Like, unbelievable. So they're not creating much. Am I looking to sell? No, I just can't with that ownership. And money's not an issue. If money was an issue, I'd forget the ownership and I'd sell. But he can still turn it on if he gets a chance because he's so clinical and he's the best finisher in the league if you look at conversion rates. Saying that, I just can't see him getting a sniff without Kane. But you're right, they do have West Brom in a couple of weeks. That's quite nice. Or is it this weekend they've got West Brom,
it's Chelsea this week. So, I mean, personally, I bought him in not really expecting anything from Chelsea anyway. But I think game week 23, I think West Brom, even Spurs without Kane, could get something against them. Like, they're so bad. I also think there's quite a good chance that Vinicius plays instead of Bale. I wouldn't be surprised because I thought when he just looks like he wants it. He wants to prove a point while Kane is out that he can do it. And he was probably the most dangerous player for the whole game, and he only played 45 minutes. So that kind of shows you the bar.
Yeah, he had that good sort of turn and shot, didn't he? Not long after he'd been on. So during the first half, I was like, I've not watched Vinicius because I don't watch Europa League. And he's played in the Europa League. So I did some research on him just on my phone while I was watching the game. Didn't realise he was 25, and he was owned by Napoli and then sold to Benfica for like 19 million. So he's got a bit of pedigree. Clubs are willing to spend decent money. Spurs then have paid a 3 million loan fee. They've also got an option to buy him at around 40 million. So the numbers we're talking about with him shows that there's pedigree there. His goals in Portugal were good. It was something like 19 goals in 38 games. So I feel like if he plays, it gives him a focal point and that will really help Son. But yeah, Bale looked rubbish, didn't he?
Yeah, I wasn't impressed at all. I don't want to when he came. I know they had those training ground videos where he was scoring and training, and everyone was like kind of going mad about it. And I saw all the jokes. I thought, all right, well, of course Spurs are going to big it up. But at this point, I feel like that has been his highlight of the transfer. Like he's just sat on the bench. He's not. Yeah. It's hard to know. I don't want to get into a whole conversation about Bale because it's not really. It's not nothing to do with team selection. They'll probably use that in another video, but. I don't know. It's hard to know his attitude. He obviously says it's all Real Madrid's fault. They're saying it's him. And now we look at him sitting on Spurs bench. And there's obviously a reason Mourinho's not playing him. If he was that player he once was, Mourinho's not stupid. Like, he wouldn't just, put him on the bench for no reason. So, yeah, anyway, Spurs, rubbish. They're playing your boys next. And your boys have got 2 clean sheets in a row. So, yeah, looking pretty decent playing that 5 at the back. I think it's going to be a struggle for Spurs.
Do you know what? The one transfer I would love to make this week, and I've not got the minerals for it, is actually Lookman out instead of Grealish to go Hudson-Odoi, and that's so me as a Chelsea fan wanting to make that move. It has to be Grealish, and I'm sure it will be Grealish. But Hudson-Odoi, if we look at the touch maps, he's been Chelsea's best player for the 2 games under Tuchel. Tuchel brought him off early, which shows me he's resting him for a start against Spurs. The most advanced player on the pitch when you look at the touch maps. Got the assist, looks really bright. This is a 19-year-old kid or does he just turned 20? That's just given license. It's really exciting for Chelsea fans to finally see him in a role that's working. Of course, he's not naturally a wing back, but he's not really playing wing back. He's playing as a wide forward when you look at the touch maps. I think it's really exciting to look at where Chelsea's wide forwards or wing backs play and who they're going to be. Is it going to be Alonso? Is it going to be Hudson-Odoi? Even if it is Chilwell or James, they then become better options because they're going to be so far advanced. So whilst my heart says go for Hudson-Odoi now and get on him early, my head says you need to give it a few games to know he's nailed, and it's only 2 games. One more game that he does really well in, and then I might start thinking about Chelsea players or Chelsea wide men.
Yeah, we've already been recording for quite a while, because I'd love to get your thoughts on Chelsea. We might do that next week if we're a bit shorter, because or we've spent less time talking about everything else, because I think it's interesting. Also, I do think actually one reason to delay the chat about Chelsea is they've had quite a few games obviously in quick succession. He's only just come in, Tuchel, so how much how much does he want to change straight away? But after the Spurs game, like if he plays a bunch of players again in that game that have already played the other 2, then I think you start to say, well, actually, these players have just played 3 in a row, and then it's Sheffield United and Newcastle, and then suddenly you get quite excited about bringing Chelsea players in. So we might touch on that next week, because obviously they've started really well. Bit of new manager bounce maybe, but yeah, Alonso is a player I would love to get in. Left wing back Alonso is like one of the favourite players in FPL. Let's just quickly finish on team selection stuff. Salah captain, I guess that's going nowhere.
Yeah, easy one this week. If he hadn't have scored the brace yesterday, it might have been one to consider your Gundogan's or your Bruno's. But no, it's Salah all day long. And he just played so well yesterday, didn't he? He took that second goal, was unbelievable. That was vintage Mo. And Brighton have looked quite good at the back, but it's Salah at home all day long.
Yeah, and I think the reverse fixture again was quite tight, but I remember that well. And Salah had a few chances, especially early on. And I just think Brighton did defend well yesterday, but that was against Spurs. Liverpool is a whole different ball game, and they actually have good players who can create chances, whereas Spurs had none yesterday. So I think it's going to be much more difficult. So yeah, I like that pick. All right, good stuff. I mean, I love your team this week because it's mostly there's only 3 players different to mine. And if you bring Grealish in, there'll only be 2 players different. So hoping you do really well. Big green arrow. Obviously, this is going out today on Monday. That's when we're recording it. We'll have another team selection before the Gameweek 22 deadline, which is on Saturday. So, yeah, lots coming thick and fast. Thank you very much for joining me again today, Gianni.
No, good stuff. Look forward to chatting at the end of the week.
Yeah, hopefully it'll be more big green arrows. All our Man City players have played, and there's big points. So, yeah, I look forward to it. We'll see what happens. If you have enjoyed it, please do give it a like. Hit subscribe if you're new around here, and we'll see you again soon.